Well, I remember one of my regular guests, Boosie, who actually beat a murder charge himself and had his lyrics played in court and everything else like that. We talked about all these various RICO charges, and he's calling them rapper RICO because, from the top down, if you look at it, like these guys are really successful entertainers. They are in the studio recording music. They are always on tour. They're doing shows. They're doing features. They're filming music videos. I mean, is it really realistic that they're also, running these big street gangs? Or is it that, they grew up in a certain area, they know certain people that might be engaging in this, and maybe they just got caught up by affiliation?
It's a good question. So one of the things that I'm seeing in Atlanta is let me back up. 75,000 people a year move to Metro Atlanta. Maybe 9 or 10,000 of them are Black and young. And half of them are looking for a way to get into the music and movie and entertainment business here because we are the Black Mecca. We're the new Hollywood. Like, you want to get your rap career on, you come to Atlanta. And I know there are people in Chicago and New York and LA who are screaming when I say that, but there it is. Only if you're just a kid who's 18 and maybe you can rap and maybe you can't, but there are 100 other people out there you're competing with. You're looking for a way to get an edge. And then a street gang that has a connection to music studios and label executives says, all right, hey, look, yeah, we'll take you. But you got to be down with the system. Let's punch you in, go do a crime so that we know that you're good. The music becomes a recruiting tool. And that's the thing that I'm worried about. That it isn't incidental. That the music labels are deliberately looking for people who are engaged in acts of violence, because those acts of violence, this drill music, is authentic, that it's street real, and that creates an audience. There's an audience for people who are looking for real rappers who are doing real stuff. And the labels, because the music industry is all screwed up right now. Because of streaming, and you don't necessarily need to be on a label in order to get your music out there. And so there are 100 different ways that people are trying to. The traditional revenue model for music has been breaking down. It's hard to make money making music. But drill sells. It's not an accident that this stuff is all at the top of the charts right now. There's a financial incentive for these label executives to be looking for somebody who's got a record and looks like he's still shooting people.
Okay. So at this point, everyone's locked up. Did anyone from YSL get bond?
I don't think so.
So all 28 people.
They're still rolling through this, so I can't say that that's going to be true forever. But I haven't heard about anybody getting bond yet.
Okay, so now you have 28 people locked up. No one's getting bond. And this is not a federal RICO case. It's a state RICO case.
It is a state RICO case.
Is there any difference between the two? Because you always hear how the feds have a 98% conviction rate, especially with their RICO cases, and no one ever gets off. You either plead out or you end up doing 100 years. I mean, is there any difference when it comes to a state RICO case?
So Georgia's RICO law is modeled almost word for word on the federal RICO law. So from a legal perspective, there isn't a lot of difference. But the amount of resources that the county prosecutor can bring to bear on a RICO case that's at the state level is much lower than the kind of resources that the federal government can bring to bear. The conviction rates are still sky high. They're still super high. They are not as high as they are for a federal case.
Okay. So, but you have a situation here where at least two of the guys, Young Thug and Gunna, are all multimillionaires. They will buy whatever type of legal aid they need to in order to get themselves out of the situation. They'll empty their entire bank account. They'll spend $10 million on their.
So here's the problem. So Young Thug has got Brian Steele, and it's funny because YFN Lucci's got Drew Finling, and Drew Finling and Brian Steele together are like Saul Goodman. They are for real. Those are the two guys. But they have to represent their own clients. They can't represent the other people. The best lawyers, and it's not just them, there are a couple of other cases that are involved. The best lawyers are already snapped up in Atlanta. Those folks, number 21 on that indictment, they get the B team. Even if it's a private attorney. So the question here is, Young Thug can't just pay for his own attorney. He has to pay for 26 other defenses, all of which have to be fairly robust. All of which also have to be completely unconnected to his own. Otherwise, that conflict of interest is going to come up and they'll be spooned out. I don't think those guys are going to and again, it's one of these things where I'm wondering if the label steps in and provides a defense, an independent defense to each of them. And even then, you start raising the question about whether or not the label, by doing that, is starting to accrue liability to itself. There are a bunch of people that are in a really tough spot.
Is there any chance at all of Young Thug walking away from this and just getting probation?
So you never want to say never. I never, ever want to say never. And I am not a lawyer. I'm just a guy who's been covering crime for a long time. There are things that could go right for him. At the top of the list would be an act of prosecutorial misconduct, and I don't know what that might be. But the sort of thing where the district attorney is screwed up in a way that's so hard that they've got to throw the case out. And if that's happening, Brian Steele would be the guy who could find that, if it's happening. Unlikely. Very unlikely, especially given who's been involved in the prosecution. We're talking about one of the most veteran prosecutors in the country. Possibly some of the evidence gets thrown out for one reason or another. A judge goes, oh yeah, these lyrics, this is prejudicial. Get this out of here. Oh, you missed a warrant over here. Now get that out of here. Oh, this gun, okay. For something, I don't know, for whatever reason, enough evidence goes away where it becomes clear that they're not going to be able to prove the racketeering and the gang charge. At which point you fall back on the other stuff. Can you prove that you were, in a conspiracy to commit a murder? And that's harder if nobody flips. 28 defendants. I'm betting somebody flips. And that's the key here. I don't see 28 people going down for the rest of their life for this sort of thing. One or more of them are going to turn evidence. They're going to explain the inner workings of this, and they'll get deals so that the prosecutors can get Young Thug. And I think this is Young Thug and everybody else is secondary.
Right. I mean, because it seems like a lot of the case is stemming from the murder that happened in 2015.
Right. And he's the guy who called it, according to the indictment.
Well, I mean, he rented the car, the Infiniti. But then again, it's not like he was in the car doing the shooting. He just rented a car.
Right.
So he could have been like, hey, my friend is broke. Yeah, my friend is broke. He needs a car. All right, cool. Here's a car. I don't know what the hell you're doing with that car. You go and kill somebody? What the hell do I got to do with that? I just rented a car.
That's exactly what Brian Steele is going to argue. And this is why I'm waiting for the rest of this evidence to start to emerge. How did they know that that was the car? How did they know that Young Thug rented it? Obviously they have a reason for saying so. But once they do, they'll start to reveal some of their other sources and the other information they've got. And suddenly a lot of stuff that's been completely invisible to us is going to come out. And then we'll have to reevaluate.
Right, because the DA said that she promised Donovan Thomas's mother that she would do everything she could to make sure that her son had justice.
That's a big deal.
But I guess that whole situation, I mean, wasn't the son also a gang leader, allegedly himself?
Yep.
So it's like you're going really hard to get justice for someone that was probably doing kind of the same thing on their end. So what is really the motivation of putting that out there? It's a little bit confusing on my end.
I think the key thing here is that a murder is a murder is a murder. Like, and it doesn't matter necessarily if the person who's murdered is good or bad. Like, I feel exactly the same way for a gang member. Like somebody who may actually have a history of violence. Like, when somebody is murdered, it creates a hole in a community. It steals redemption away. Who is to say that Donovan Thomas today would not be a leader in the fight against gang violence? Like, we'll never know because that moment was stolen from him because he was murdered. Like, I think as a matter of principle, you have to treat every single death identically, whether that person is white or black, rich or poor, a criminal or a saint. And I think that's where the prosecutor is coming from.
From your point of view, do you think that Gunna could potentially walk away from this?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if walk away is a strong word. I mean, I think he's likely to plea out and be convicted of something. He'll be a felon if he pleads guilty. The question is whether or not he does actual jail time and how much. Because if somebody gets like at Gunna's age, if he gets 5 years and gets out, he's got a life and a career in front of him. Like, he could go back into music. He'll probably still have some money, maybe. I question whether or not any of these guys actually get out of this with their wallets intact. But he'll still have enough star power, I suspect, to be able to do another album and make more money. But it's not clear. Like, I don't know. He's charged with serious crimes. Like, the drug trafficking crime is a serious crime. Like, that's likely 5 or 10 years on the face of it.
Right, but was he actually drug trafficking or was he just using?
I don't
and
know.
He just had a lot of it because he's got money. You know what I'm saying? Was
It's a good
Gunna
question.
out there selling lean, or was he just drinking lean?
It's a good question. It's a good question. And any competent defense attorney is going to, that's exactly how they're going to present it. Like, that he wasn't a drug dealer. He was just, he had the Costco supply thing going on for his stash, and it might just be that simple. Like, and that would be an argument, especially if you're trying to plea out. Like, I don't think he wants to go to trial, because if he goes to trial, it's not just the evidence of the drug stuff. It's all the other gang stuff. And he's got to sit in front of that same jury who's going to hear all of this other gang stuff that is going to look super criminal. Like, a jury that was just hearing the drug stuff might go, eh. But if the jury is hearing this drug stuff and, like, guns, and, this guy had a switch, and, this guy was in this rap war that was murdering people with this other stuff, and you're connected to this, they'll convict him just out of, like, an abundance of caution. Like, even though that's not the law, that's what a jury will do.